Lately, I've been feeling very stressed and I've been feeling kind of stifled creatively, which is nobody's fault but my own. So today I'm just gonna bust out of it and do something different. I'm still going to sew the next piece of clothing for my capsule wardrobe, but I'm not going to follow my designs today. I originally sketched out two different versions of a green shirt and a little bolero using some scrap fabric. And today I'm just gonna scrap both of those designs and mix my fabrics together to make something totally different. I'm still going to use this green stretch knit fabric as the base of my shirt, and then I'm going to use the leftover scraps from making my dress form cover. Instead of making a bolero, I'm going to use this as an accent piece. And I also have this stretch knit lace that will maybe be cute with it. I don't know. I have a few other colors of scraps lying around. Everything's gonna be knit and stretchy, and we're just gonna go with that. I'm also gonna be drafting my pattern differently today. I'm not going to be using my dress form. I'm going to be using the clone your clothes method of pattern drafting by using this simple black tank dress that's frankly very comfortable, and I wear it as a base layer all the time. So I'm gonna try and make my green shirt based on this pattern. So I set out to work cloning my dress pattern, which was fairly simple because it's a simple pattern. It really only has two pattern pieces, one for the front and one for the back. The front pattern piece is drafted with a fold line down the center line, and the back of the dress is technically two pieces, but it's still only one pattern piece that's flipped for one for the right, one for the left, with a center seam down the back. Now I've tried my pattern on my dress form just to get a general idea. Is it gonna fit me, or do I need to make more alterations now? And the back looks great. I don't have any issues with the back. The side seam seems to mostly line up, but I might give myself a little extra ease when I cut out the pattern pieces. And the front, I'm just not sure about. Now, when you use knit fabrics, you expect it to stretch a little bit. But I'm just trying to decide, am I expecting it to stretch enough? So I'm gonna take my fabric and line it up, and then stretch. Yeah, I get a decent amount of stretch out of this fabric. So I think I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna make a bottom layer first with just the green fabric, and then I'm gonna use like all the other scraps to make a top layer. So let's go cut out the fabric. I folded my green stretch knit fabric in half and overlaid my pattern pieces. When I pinned my pattern pieces to my fabric, I made sure the back piece was free on all sides while the front panel lined up with the fold line. And I cut my pattern pieces out with a fairly generous seam allowance, especially under the armpits and on top of the shoulder. I also trimmed my hem a few inches shorter than my pattern because I plan to make this more of a shirt or a tunic than a dress. Oh, hi. Can you not rustle stuff? Oh, fluffy boy. You a floppy Cujo. Cujo. You're gonna get this stuff taken away, buddy. Oh. Cujo! I'm gonna get you, dude. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get the Cujo. Yo, baby, what you doing? This is a fairly simple pattern, so I don't think it'll take much time to get it all sewn together and fitted. So I placed the back side seam over the front side seam, right sides together, and pinned down the armpit to the hem. And I also pinned the shoulders together. Then I overlaid the two back panels right sides together and pinned down the center back seam. I set the tension on my serger and then serged all my seams together. I also serged the raw edges of my neckline and my armholes because this is a loose knit that kept wanting to fray. Well, it fits basically how I wanted it to. Nice and flowy and loose and comfortable. It is definitely longer than I wanted it to be, but if I cinch it up, is that not a fun little tunic? Maybe? Maybe. So maybe I'll keep this long and then make the overlay like 6 inches shorter and then put some ribbons down the side. And then I can either wear it long like a dress or cinch it and have it as a shirt or a tunic. Maybe that's what I should do with this. I'm trying to be more creative and be more fun with this project. I'm trying not to like lock down and give myself rules for it. And that's kind of where I'm leaning. That's kind of where the creativity's taken me. Today I'm gonna make a second layer for this tunic dress shirt thing. But today is going to be the hottest day and a really nasty heat wave, and I don't have AC in this room, so I only have a few hours before it gets too hot in here to sew. So I'm just gonna get going. I wanted to make my own textile for the top layer. So I laid out my fabric scraps and cut them into strips of various widths. I cut strips out of the fabric scraps I used to make the cover for my dress form. I used strips of the green fabric that I used to make the lining for this project. I also used the fabric scraps left over from making one of the dresses in my capsule wardrobe. And I cut strips out of that yard of lace fabric as well. Then I took the different widths of fabric and different colors of fabric scraps and laid all the strips out side by side, and some up, some down, with a few triangles in between to mix things up. And when I thought I had enough fabric strips laid out next to each other to make at least a yard of fabric, I stacked all of my strips of fabric together. Then I moved over to my serger and very carefully set each fabric strip on top of the next fabric strip and sewed them together with my serger. I was careful not to twist the fabric as I was working with it so that all of my serged seams ended up on the back side of my fabric and none of my fabric got caught in my serger while sewing my textile together. It ended up taking a full hour to serge all of my fabric strips together because this was kind of difficult. The pieces were hard to line up, the edges wanted to curl, and they kind of wiggled around in my machine a bit, and it was not easy to do. But I did end up succeeding in serging all my fabric scraps together and making my own textile. I'm liking the just flowiness of what I have going on right now, and I kind of like a straight across little thing going on here. I don't know, what do I call this? I like this neckline, and maybe I could just put a little bit of lace here and then leave the shoulders green. I think that might be cute. I love you, dude. And the back isn't quite as flowy as what I want, so I made an extra little panel. Can just stick in there, and maybe I can just trim up around here and not even have to get my pattern back out and just stitch on top or something. What are you doing? Oh. I love you too, buddy. You wanna look at the camera? You wanna say hi? You wanna say hi, Kojo? Oh, I love you too, baby. You're so floppy. You're so floppy, Kojo. You're such a good boy. So I trimmed my fabric to better match the lining. I matched the arm side of the top layer to the arm side of the lining. And I fiddled with the back a bit to get a decent seam lined up in the center of the back and to get that panel to sit where I wanted it to. Then I serged that new panel to the back and serged a back seam. I attached that strip of lace to the top front of the neckline and serged all the raw edges of the arm size and the neckline to keep my fabric from unraveling. That is satisfactory. What's not satisfactory are all these wrinkles. So before I start sewing the two layers together, I'm going to dye in here by making it even hotter by running my iron. So I braved the heat and steam of my iron to press down all my seams and make my shell a little bit flatter, a little bit nicer, a little bit better of a fabric. Then I very carefully pinned the shell to the lining, making sure I lined up the arm size perfectly. But I did struggle a little bit with the front, just getting everything lined up, and there was a little extra lace that I gathered and tucked into the neckline a bit, so we'll see how that comes out. And I tucked the top of the neckline under on the back side. Then I got distracted by my pile of fabric scraps and ended up using 3 of the really long scraps of fabric to braid a cute little belt. This belt adds just a really nice touch to this piece, but I also think it's gonna look cute with the rest of my capsule wardrobe, so I'm glad I got distracted and played with my fabric scraps a bit. But it is now 85 degrees in this room. It's been 85 degrees in this room since I turned that iron on, and even getting another fan to try and blow the hot air out of this room just hasn't really helped, and I'm at the point where it's too hot to keep sewing in here. So I think I'm done for the day. I ended up waiting out the heat wave because it was just too hot to get back in here, and I've been really tired and felt like crap all week. So I've been letting the thoughts just stew around in my head, and I've been thinking about what I'm making here and what I want to do next. And ultimately I've decided I'm going to leave this as a dress because I love the length of it, I love the way it looks, and I just feel like if I crop it and make it a shirt, I'm not going to want to wear it as much as if I leave it as a dress. So I'm gonna take that idea I had with like the laces and the cinching up the side because I still like that idea. I also don't think it's gonna work well with this fabric because it's a knit fabric, and I think that idea would work better with a woven fabric. So I'm gonna just keep that thought in my head and use it for something else later. And I'm gonna keep this as a dress because I think I'm gonna wear it that way the most, and I'll get the most enjoyment out of making my own clothing if I make something that I'm going to want to wear. So even though I wasn't planning on making another dress for the capsule wardrobe, I always wear dresses. I'm gonna wear it more if I do that. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I carefully removed my dress from my dress form and collected some hand sewing supplies to get hand sewing. I used a single needle and 2 lengths of black thread to sew my shell to my lining with an applique blanket quilting stitch. I hand sewed this stitch along both the front and back neckline. And I hand basted the arm size in place, basically using a running stitch. Then I finish the arm side and neckline by using my fabric scraps to make bands. I cut a few strips of scraps about the same length as my arm size and neckline, just a little bit shorter. I pieced the ends together and serged these scraps into tubes. And then I folded each tube in half and pinned the raw edge of the band to the arm side and neckline right sides together. And I very carefully serged my bands to my garment. That was really nerve-wracking for some reason, and I can't help but feel like it came out terrible. I tied off my serger ends and used a crochet hook to weave them through the seam allowance. And then I booted up my iron and ironed all of my bands for my arm sides and neckline. I know this is a really popular method of finishing knitwear, but I've never tried it before because it's always been kind of scary, and I know you only get one shot at it, otherwise your serger knife eats up all your fabric and you can't try it again. But I think it came out fairly well. I did mess up on the first pass just a little bit, but it's not too bad. The only problem with it at this point is I do have excess fabric in the arm side, and that is causing it to gap and not fully cover my bra under my armpit. So I pinched out about an inch wide dart on both of the armpits, and I'm gonna sew that at some point, but I'm done for the day, so I'll probably do that tomorrow. I ended up hand sewing my darts with a back stitch, and it turned out fairly well. I love you too. Are you screaming at me from the bottom of the stairs? Mom! I love you too! You're such a good boy! What are you doing? You fighting? Alright, come in here. I love you too. Now the only thing I have left to do is the hem, which is actually something I've been doing a lot of thinking about, because something you have to worry about when you make your own textiles is how you're going to sew all your fabric together, particularly in a hem. Now if I just do a regular folded hem and stick it in my sewing machine, I'm going to run into the problem where each fabric, now there's 4 different knit fabrics in this dress, shirt, tunic, whatever you want to call it. Each fabric would need its own tension on my sewing machine to give like a smooth, even hem. So I'm just not going to do a smooth, even hem. I'm going to do a lettuce hem. So lettuce. I used pins to mark out a hemline along the shell, making sure I left the lining free. And this was really easy because the shortest panel actually lined up with my ruler, and I just used the top of the ruler all the way around the hemline. And I double checked I liked the look of it with a belt because that's how I'm going to wear this most of the time. I only trimmed the shell because I want that green lining to peek through the bottom. I adjusted my stitch width very low and raised my differential feed to the highest position, which is 0.7. I practiced sewing my lettuce hem with the scrap of fabric I cut off the bottom, and it turned out all right. The only advice I can give you about sewing a lettuce hem is it's gonna feel really bad stretching your fabric as tightly as possible before running it through your serger. But it does give you a very unique finish. I really got into my lettuce hem technique on the lining by stretching just the very edge of the hem, so I think my lining actually came out better than the shell. I always save my scrap fabrics. And I tied off and wove through my serger ends on the hemline. too short to be a dress. I'm not sure that I would call it a dress. I'd probably still wear it with pants or a skirt under it if I like wore it to work. So maybe it is still a tunic. I'm not sure what to call this. I just know that I really like it. And this is the closest I personally am ever going to get to boho style, because I love boho style, but I'm just too dark for it. Like, I'm too goth for it, and it just doesn't mesh with my color palette. But this feels like, I don't know, what do we call this? Moody boho? Maybe it's like a mix between goth and boho with like the little different colors and patterns and flowy and frilly, but still a little bit dark. I'm coining a new term now. It's called boho for moody boho. That's just like a darker color palette, bohemian style. You can use it if you want. And this came out like way different than the original idea I had planned for it, but I think that's good. I needed something fun. I needed a statement piece for my capsule wardrobe, because otherwise it's just gonna be too boring for me. But since I didn't make a shirt with this, I made more of a dress, I do still need to make a shirt. I need to make at least 2 shirts for my capsule wardrobe. So if you guys are interested in following along, make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you can watch me make some shirts maybe next month. And if you liked seeing my wild creative process, make sure you leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I'll see you guys next time.